Welcome back to Go, a 40-day journey to the never reached. I'm Jeff Hartensfeld. This is Brian Webb, and we welcome you back to just another installation of what we've been studying now over probably several weeks, and hoping and praying that you're enjoying the journey as you go here. And today we are going to talk about go in. And I'm going to start out by reading a scripture from John chapter 20. And I am going to read verses 1 to 8 from the ESV. Here's what it says. Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter, the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." So Peter went out with the other disciple, and they were going toward the tomb. Both of them were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. And stooping to look in, he saw the linen cloths lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen clothes lying there, and the face cloth which had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also went in, and he saw and believed.
Yeah.
So we're talking about go in here, and you can see, Brian, in the scriptures that it's actually used a couple of times here.
Yeah.
So this is obviously an important concept, this idea of go in, and just some really, I would say, clever devotionals too, just in how, they saw this from a spiritual standpoint and the importance of actually going in. So, just talk and walk us through a couple of these devotionals and some of the thoughts on go in.
All right. This is John's account.
Right.
So one of the first things that stands out when you read this
Yeah.
is, wait a second, that's not the way it said it in Matthew or Mark or Luke. But really what you have in those Gospels is you have the condensed version. The condensed version says, Mary went to the tomb, saw an angel, saw Jesus, told the disciples. Right. John gives you the expanded version.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of that, he adds this very personal anecdote that only he, Peter, maybe Mary would have known. So the story as we see it from John's perspective is Mary goes to the tomb early in the morning. That it says before it was daylight,
dark,
or while
yeah.
it was still dark.
Right.
Yeah. Sees the tomb is open, sees Jesus is not there, makes the assumption they've stolen his body.
Right.
Runs back to tell Peter and John this. They are running down together. Peter's a little heavier set than John. John gets to the tomb first.
And I love how John refers to himself in like the third person almost.
Yeah, well, of course he does that, right?
Yeah.
Through the whole book.
Yeah.
But when John gets there,
Right.
he does not go in, and only John knows that, and that is such an incredibly personal
Yeah, it really is.
aspect of it. So
Right.
What made John hold back?
Yeah.
Greg Mundis, he speculated maybe it was a fear of the guards, maybe it was not wanting to find a decomposing body.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
There's this whole cleanliness issue for the Jews at that time and being defiled as a result of
And then one of the things you brought out, was the disciples were unlearned people. They were not educated people.
That's right.
They were prone to superstition.
Right.
When they saw Jesus walking on the water,
Right.
their first reaction was,
That's a ghost.
That's a ghost. So if you're a bit superstitious,
Yeah.
and you walk up to an empty tomb,
Graveyards are not cool.
It's just and an empty one. That's just like what's
happening? Go
here?
in there.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
John points out just a little bit further that at this point, he didn't understand that the scriptures prophesied of Christ's resurrection.
Right. Yeah. Nobody
So-
really did.
so
it when
there's
the
an empty
disciples did.
tomb, but
they
he-
didn't remember anyway.
Yeah, he doesn't know why it's empty.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe it's that. There's one of the devotions, Missy Towers, that she has this really personal struggle where she struggled to believe.
Yeah.
She went through a really challenging time. And what she suggested is maybe John stood at the edge of the grave and thought, what if I go in and it's not true and he's still there?
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's like, have you ever prayed for God to heal something?
Yeah.
Personally, I've struggled with vision, had vision problems for years, and I would pray so hard, but then I was afraid to open my eyes.
Right.
It's like, I can believe I'm healed as long as my eyes are closed, but when my eyes are open,
Yeah.
I'm going to see I'm not healed again, right?
Right.
Was that John's hesitation? The thing about it is, it doesn't matter why John didn't go in.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what made him
Right.
hesitate. What matters is that ultimately he did step in.
Yeah.
When he stepped in, he saw.
Yeah.
And something about the way he saw those grave clothes,
Yeah.
they changed everything for John.
Right.
And he believed.
You know, let me read Missy's quote. She wrote, "Only when we enter into God's presence and truly experience His glory for ourselves can we have the confidence to take His glory to the nations, and in our case, to the never reached."
Yeah. So going in, Greg Mundis makes this point. Standing on the outside, it gives you a perspective. Going in, it makes you a witness.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so we have to do that. Like each one of us personally have to go in. We have to see that the resurrection of Jesus Christ is true.
Yeah.
We have to let that change our lives.
Yeah.
And then once we've been changed by the resurrecting power of Jesus Christ, we are His witnesses to the nations.
You know, and of course, you contributed to the book. I contributed, some chapters, and this is one of the ones that, I
Did,
contributed. And, one of the things I tried to bring out in the go in piece was that here you've got John who hesitates, and you've got Peter who just busts in. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that really came to me was, as we talk about reaching the never reached, and humanity as a whole, all over the world, whether it's here in the United States or overseas, everybody goes in a little differently.
Yeah.
Some people bust in, other people kind of peer in,
Right.
but everybody needs to go in.
Right.
And, people around the world, I would say, even as we do our work and as people interact with this devotional and they talk about going in, I'm sure that there are people that if you're with us here in this study, who need to go in. And maybe the way they go in, you may have somebody or know somebody that just kind of, busted in or went right in to know the Lord. But maybe you've got a friend, maybe you've got somebody that you've been sharing Christ with and they're hesitating. Can you imagine if John was, and I think I said this in the book, is John's looking in and all of a sudden Peter comes up behind him and shoves him into the, into the grave. That wouldn't really work well, So John needed to see those clothes, those grave clothes you talked about, go in and experience the power of God. Yeah. And people around the world are actually waiting to go in. I think it's our core belief that all humanity needs to know Christ.
Absolutely.
And they're waiting to go in and have, as Missy said, that that amazing experience. So as you interact now with the questions that you have, we just encourage you to stay on the journey and remember the never reached. Pray for the never reached people group that's in the book, and believe with us for people who are still waiting to go in. Thanks for joining us on Go, a journey to reach the never reached, a 40-day journey to reach the never reached.